There comes a moment in many men's lives when something quietly, fundamentally changes. Not their physical strength, not their intelligence, not even their confidence. What changes is their need to explain themselves. The man who once defended every decision, who justified every choice, who desperately tried to make everyone understand his perspective, suddenly becomes quiet. Not because he has nothing to say, but because he has finally learned something that most people never do. After 60, many high-value men discover a profound psychological truth. Peace is rarely found in winning arguments. It is found in no longer needing them. In the field of behavioral psychology, this transition marks the ultimate stage of masculine maturity. Today we will explore the psychology of the sovereign mind. We will dissect exactly why high-value senior men stop explaining themselves, and why this quiet habit often becomes one of the strongest, most unshakable signs of true wisdom. Let us uncover the truth. Section 1. They completely stop seeking permission. For much of life, many men unknowingly operate under a psychological framework known as an external locus of control. They seek permission for their very existence. Permission to change careers, permission to retire, permission to spend their own money, permission to say no, permission to simply enjoy life. Sometimes that permission comes from family, sometimes from friends, sometimes from the invisible crushing weight of society itself. Without realizing it, men begin explaining every decision before anyone even asks. They preemptively build defense cases for their lifestyle choices, hoping to avoid criticism. Over time, this becomes psychologically exhausting. Then, something radical changes. A senior man realizes that his life is not a public debate. He does not owe everyone a logical explanation for how he chooses to spend his remaining years. The only person he owes absolute honesty to is himself. That realization is incredibly freeing. He no longer asks, "Will people approve?" Instead, he asks, "Does this decision align with the life I actually want to live?" When that internal question becomes vastly more important than other people's external opinions, the frantic need to explain quietly, beautifully disappears. And once he stops asking for permission, he begins noticing something even more surprising about human nature. Section 2. They understand that not everyone actually wants to understand. Many men waste the best years of their lives trying to explain themselves to people who have already made up their minds. In psychology, this is known as confirmation bias. People will only hear what validates their existing worldview, no matter how carefully they speak, no matter how articulate, patient, or logical they are. Some people are deeply, fiercely committed to misunderstanding them. High-value senior men eventually recognize this exhausting pattern. They stop confusing the act of explaining with the act of communicating. Real communication requires two people who are genuinely willing to listen. If only one person is listening, there is no conversation. There is only resistance. Wisdom teaches them to recognize the difference immediately. Instead of arguing endlessly with a brick wall, they deploy the ultimate defensive tactic. They simply smile. They respectfully disagree, and they continue living their lives. Because not every misunderstanding needs a correction. Some people will understand you only after time proves you right, and some people never will. The high-value man accepts that both outcomes are perfectly acceptable. This lesson naturally leads to another powerful realization concerning the mathematics of aging. Section 3. Silence protects energy. Every single explanation costs something. It costs time, it costs mental focus, and above all, it costs emotional energy. After 60, a man's physiological and psychological energy becomes one of his most fiercely guarded resources. He evaluates his allostatic load, the wear and tear on his nervous system caused by stress. He begins protecting this energy with the ruthlessness of a sovereign king. He no longer spends an hour defending a 5-minute decision. He absolutely does not argue with strangers on the internet. He does not justify his quiet lifestyle to distant relatives who thrive on drama. He does not chase approval. Instead, he takes that conserved energy and invests it where it actually yields a return: his health, his family, his close, loyal friendships, his hobbies, his peace of mind. He understands a brutal, simple truth. Every unnecessary explanation is a unit of energy that could have been spent building a better life, and that is a price he simply no longer wants to pay. But perhaps the biggest reason of all has nothing to do with other people. It has everything to do with quiet confidence. Section 4. They no longer feel the need to defend their boundaries. One of the greatest psychological changes that comes with age is the profound understanding that a boundary does not require a lengthy, apologetic explanation. When many men are younger, saying the word no comes with a heavy dose of guilt. They feel the need to justify every decision. They hope that if they explain their reasoning well enough, everyone will gracefully accept their boundary without being offended. But experience teaches a very different, very harsh lesson. People who genuinely respect you rarely demand endless explanations. And those who refuse to respect your boundaries often will not be satisfied, no matter how detailed, logical, or polite your explanation is. High-value senior men eventually realize that every healthy relationship depends on mutual respect. Respect for time, respect for choices, respect for personal limits. Instead of arguing, they calmly look a person in the eye and say, "That doesn't work for me." And they leave it exactly there. Not because they are rude or arrogant, but because they understand that boundaries are not invitations for a negotiation. Every time a man confidently enforces a boundary without an apology, he quietly tells the world something vital. I respect myself enough to protect my peace. And that silent confidence earns vastly more respect than endless explanations ever could. Once a man stops defending his boundaries, he begins to notice something fascinating about the people around him. Section 5. They let their actions speak. One of the greatest lessons experience teaches the masculine mind is this: words may impress people temporarily, but actions convince them permanently. Many younger men spend years trying to verbally explain who they are to the world. I'm loyal. I'm responsible. I'm honest. I'm dependable. But high-value senior men rarely, if ever, feel the need to announce these qualities. They simply embody them. As the great Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. If they promise something, they do it. If they value honesty, they practice it. If they believe in kindness, they demonstrate it. Because they understand that human character is revealed entirely through consistent actions, not persuasive speeches. In fact, the older man becomes deeply suspicious of people who constantly feel the need to verbally explain how good or honest they are. Real integrity never needs an advertising campaign. It becomes undeniable over time. This is why many older men stop trying to convince people of their worth. They know that those who pay attention will see it naturally, and those who refuse to see it would never have believed the explanation anyway. But perhaps the biggest transformation happens inside a man's own mind when he confronts the mirror of society. Section 6. They become completely comfortable being misunderstood. This is one of the hardest psychological hurdles in the human experience. The human ego is desperate to be perceived perfectly, but the reality is, not everyone will understand you. Some people will misunderstand your silence, assuming you are angry. Others will misunderstand your independence, assuming you are lonely. Some may mistake your calmness for weakness. Others may mistake your quiet confidence for arrogance. When men are younger, these misunderstandings can feel absolutely unbearable. They rush to correct the record. They explain themselves. They vehemently defend their intentions, terrified of being the villain in someone else's story. But after 60, many realize something profoundly freeing. Other people's opinions of you are not your responsibility. Trying to control how everyone on earth perceives you is a psychological battle you can never truly win. Someone will always judge. Someone will always disagree. Someone will always create a fictional narrative that has absolutely nothing to do with your reality. The wise man accepts this, not with bitterness, but with absolute peace. He understands that living authentically is infinitely more important than being universally understood. Ironically, the very moment he stops trying to control his public image, he becomes more genuine, more relaxed, and more magnetic than ever before. And finally, there is one last reason that ties all the others together: the ultimate realization of the sovereign man. Section 7. They realize peace is worth vastly more than being right. Many people spend their entire lives on a battlefield, trying to prove themselves, trying to win every single disagreement, trying to have the final word, trying to force everyone to see their logic. High-value senior men eventually pause and ask a different question. What will I actually gain if I win this argument? Most of the time, the answer is very little. Perhaps a wounded ego feels satisfied for a fleeting moment. Perhaps someone begrudgingly admits they are right. But what was lost in the process? Time, energy, peace, and sometimes relationships. Older men understand that some victories are simply too expensive. A Pyrrhic victory, where you win the argument but destroy your peace of mind, is a loss in disguise. So they choose peace instead. They do not avoid difficult conversations, but they absolutely refuse to chase unnecessary conflict. If someone genuinely wants to understand them, they are happy to talk. If someone only wants to argue, they quietly step away. Because they have finally learned the ultimate truth of the masculine journey. Silence is not surrender. Sometimes, silence is the absolute highest form of confidence. If you are a man who has chosen the path of quiet confidence, know that you are not broken. You are the architect of your own freedom. I want to hear from you. Head down to the comments and tell me, at what age did you finally stop explaining yourself to people who didn't want to listen? What was the breaking point that set you free? Your scars and your wisdom will help guide the younger men who are still fighting blindly through the storm. If you found value in this deep dive into male psychology, please hit the like button, subscribe to the Sage Academy channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a lesson. Thank you for watching. Until next time, guard your peace and let your actions speak.